Good morning and thank you for joining us on the Dailies here on Echo Television International. I am Rachel Tanze and today I will be going through the papers with Lois Turaki.
Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Lois. How's been the week?
The week has been full of ups and downs, you know. The normal hustle and bustle of the week and then going up and down, doing other stuff, going from work.
Yeah.
And you know, you go home, you still do other work in the house.
Yes.
Thank God it's weekend anyways.
Thank God it's Friday.
Have a lot of activities,
Yeah, and for some reason,
lined up for the weekend.
I love Fridays, but for the first time, I'm not excited about Fridays because it looks like the weekend is going to be still a very busy one. And then in as much as, you know, we having the weekend closing in and the week closing in rather, we still have so much unfolding on our papers, which we will be going through, such as, you know, the hearing for the minimum wage starting yesterday. And then we are seeing that the TUC, the NLC are not really having the same voices when it comes to what should be the minimum wage. They're even suggesting zoning when it comes to minimum wage in the country. And many of such we will be seeing on the papers as we go through them. And the lawyers will be starting with the first paper.
And the first paper is the Vanguard newspaper. The big story here says minimum wage, NLC TUC split, want different pay in zones. The writer says NLC TUC public sector proposals range from 120,000 naira to 850,000 naira. South workers propose 850,000 naira as governors stay away. Southeast NLC wants 540,000 naira. TUC 447,000 naira. The Northwest NLC proposes 485,000 naira as Governor Sean Parley wage increase unsustainable without adjustments in national economy. This is coming from Southwest governors, and governors Eno and Diri promise to implement outcome of hearings. If you're interested in this story, because I know most Nigerians will be interested in this particular story, you can find details on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. From the top of the newspaper, CBN to sanction DFIs, PMBs, MFBs over late submission of returns. Edo Guba, women youths want suspension of Shaibu's impeachment process. The writer says we want peace but can't stop lawmakers from working. This is coming from PDP. The effort to evolve crisis coming from Shaibu. You left me with enormous shoes to fill, Wige's daughter lament, and Harvard Wige's death loss to Africa. This is coming from the former Vice President of Nigeria, Oshibajo. Reps to review 2024 budget demand assessment of current exchange rate. You can find more details of the story on page 8 of the Vanguard newspaper. From the down part of the paper, it says bandits invade Kaduna school, kidnap over 200 pupils and teachers. You can find details on page 9. New satellite pay will give Nigerians value for money. This is coming from the federal government. Since humanity is not ready for the Third World War, it is logical to ask when Macron will leave the French presidency. 2027 may be too far. And on sports, AJ versus Ngannou, it's Judgment Day in Riyadh. And there's a picture story here that says Tinubu becomes grand patron of science. And from here we can see the president receiving the award or during the investiture of President Tinubu at the Grand Patron of Science by the Nigerian Academy of Science of the Presidential Villa in Abuja yesterday. The event took place yesterday in Abuja, and from the left we can see former president of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Gabriel, and we can also see other professors there, and then former presidents of that particular institute, all at the event. And these are all the stories you can find on the Vanguard newspaper.
On Nigerian Tribune, leadership and alliance with time-bound President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. To comprehend Chief Awolow's teachings, we must confront the obscured reality of leadership. You can find more details on page 10. The big story on the paper: bandits invade Kaduna school, 280 pupils missing, Fed abducted. Ensure safe return of abducted pupils, reps tell security agencies. Alleged 1.2 billion naira misappropriation. Tinubu suspends REAMD, appoints Adilabu running mate non-executive director. Armed robbers attacked 2 banks in Kogi State. Increasing rate of poverty, hunger in Nigeria worsen, coming from JNI and CAN. Ondo Guba, no decision yet on zoning. This is coming from PDP. Still on the paper, Labour defies unappropriate new minimum wage for workers. Southwest NLC proposes 794,000 naira, TUC 497,000 naira. OPS appeals for understanding. We have Southeast NLC TUC proposed 540,000 naira, 447,000 naira. Then we have the FCT NLC proposes 709,000 naira. Workers minimum wage, a starving wage, coming from the NLC president Joe Ajero. You can find details on page 12, and I believe, Lois, this is the minimum wage we are talking about. It's obviously going to be on most of the papers, and it is a buzz because we have been waiting for this hearing, because it's expected that by the second quarter of 2024 this minimum wage should be implemented. So we are looking at April's salaries coming in with the minimum wage implemented, hopefully. And then the hearing have started. We see how it has been zoned and the different venues where it's going to be taking place. And then now, I like the fact that the NLC is setting the bar high, in as much as the minimum wage between the NLC and the TEC, you can see a split difference. However, in the end, it's all about the average plus divide what is the average, and it will definitely fall between the same bracket either way at the end of the day, and then they are setting the bar high. However, my concern is that despite setting the bar high, the truth is the reason we are where we are is because the currency we trade at, our naira, is falling against it. And we're going to be realistic concerning where our minimum wage is supposed to be. It's definitely going to be above 2 million naira. We're looking at 3 million naira if our government is going to be reasonable. The fact that it is the dollar we are competing against here, and the reason why there is so much hardship as it is now. If we're going to talk about our minimum wage, what is appropriate and what should be is at least 2 million. That is, despite this looking high, is not even up to the standard of what it should be concerning minimum wages in the country. However, I am waiting to see, because whether we like it or not, our labor is there, right? But the final say, the final implementation, the big dogs, if I might use that slang, or the big, the ogas, that in the end, at the top, that will really at the end determine what this is. We're looking at our governors, and then we are looking at our executives, that is the lawmakers and all of that. And we are hoping, I am hoping, that they be reasonable. Now the challenge is that 30,000 naira minimum wage has not been implemented in majority of the states in the country. Now, will our governors step in and say, we can be able to pay 500,000 naira minimum wage, 300,000 naira minimum wage, 400,000 naira minimum wage? Because in the end, it still boils down to them, their capacity and what they can give. Because even if we have bigger players like Lagos State stepping in the FCT, that's the federal capital, like the zone, even if we have other states stepping in and saying we can, we're looking at most 5 out of the 36 states in the country. What will be the fate of other workers in Nigeria regarding the strength? We saw yesterday on the papers where most state governments are dependent on allocations from the federal government, and without that, their IGR is nothing. They literally can't even pay salaries, wages at their state level with the IGR from the state and all of that. So I'm just waiting to see. This is the NLC. We still have our governors to say what they can and are willing to as the minimum wage, and then we still also have our lawmakers coming out to say, okay, you know what, this is the benchmark, and this is and I'm just hoping that they will be very reasonable and also, you know what, meet NLC at some point.
Really a good one for NLC and TUC, although they are still divided in a way about the amounts to be paid in particular regions. But I think the benchmark is not, just like you have mentioned, is not even what is supposed to be, but it's still high. Because looking at what we have right now, the 30,000 naira that some governors are not even paying, and then looking at what they are proposing now, that's like, I don't know, you triple how many times before you get from what is you have currently. So it's a good one. I just hope that these governors will be able to implement, because, and I think it is, or I believe it is a push for some of the states that are not generating revenue for them to be able to pay this amount of money to their workers. So I think there are states, of course, that Governor Eno and DP are saying anything that comes, they are willing, they will implement, they are up to the task to implement it, which is a good one. And I know states like Lagos and the Federal Capital and maybe Port Harcourt, all those other states we feel that are generating revenue will be able to pay. But what of other states that can't? So it's a wake-up call for all these governors to be able to generate revenue so that they can meet up. It's not an excuse, because as far as we are concerned, people are going through a lot. The hardship is increasing, and the president is saying we have to be patient. And then for us to be patient, we can't just sit and fold our arms and wait for the day that things will get better according to what the president is saying. So things have to be implemented, things have to be done. This minimum wage have to be increased, whether things get better or not. It has to, because it's far overdue that these things are even the way they are. And then the states that have not even paid the 30,000 naira, I don't know how they are going to do it, but it's a wake-up call. That's just what that's just how I see it. It's a wake-up call for all of them to be able to wake up to their responsibilities and do the needful.
And Lois, just as you said, state governors have no excuse whatsoever. Even if you're making little or nothing, you have to up your game. This minimum wage needs to be increased. And we're not going to sit down and because you were not able to implement 30,000 naira and your state, this is where and after I believe that the NLC at the state level should wake up and tell their state governors, you must implement, because whether or not, that is up to you. Sit down, come up with ways to generate revenue, but we are not taking any excuse from you whether you were able to implement 30,000 naira in the past or not. If now the minimum wage is 200,000, you are going to implement it by hook or crook, and then I'm just looking forward to seeing that.
The minimum wage was not this low, I don't think people would really even complain of the hardship as much as. But it's the fact that it's as low as that. People have to complain, and people are not complaining out of the blues. It's because of what they are going through.
All right, we can move on to the next paper now.
The Guardian. From the top, we have widowed by insurgency and gallantry. Millions of widows in dire straits over lack of structure and empathy. Nigeria is home to about 15 million of the world's 258 million widows. Data shows an increasing number of younger widows between the ages of 23 and 40. On health, Nigeria records 583 Lassa fever cases and 108 deaths. You can find more details on page 3. Labor divided on minimum wage as NLC slashes demand to 794,000 naira. TUC opts for 447,000 naira. You can find more details of the story on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Nigerian women task government on inclusion, gender balance beyond yearly promises. On judicial matters, court admits evidence in $6.2 million alleged fraud suit against Emefiele. can find more details on page 3. Agency banking threatened as fraudsters run operators out of business. Fubara offers to give up office in exchange for peace. You can find more details on page 9. And the last story here says reps AI condemn kidnap epidemic as bandits abduct dozens of Kaduna school pupils. Kaduna has always have this kidnap of school children. I know some in recent times we've had a lot of schools that have students, pupils were abducted, and at some point they had to even shut down school for a while. And now we are seeing a resurgence of this, although it's not like it went down totally, but this is a really high number compared to the recent ones we've been hearing. This is a lot of almost 220 something children, pupils have been kidnapped. It's really, I don't know, it's really sad. It's really sad that things are Kaduna State is supposed to be one of the most secured states, I feel, because of the Nigeria Defense Academy, or the headquarters is there. We have the School of Artillery in Kachia. We have a lot of the, you know, all of that place is supposed to be secured. But then now it is one of the hard-hit areas in the northwest. It's really sad, Rachel.
Really sad. And then today also happened to be, you know, Women's International Day, like 8th March is every year. And then no wonder we are seeing some statistics on the Guardian concerning widowed women. I mean, is there any place that Nigeria is not topping when it comes to numbers? Well, we are popular, so it's only expected. We're seeing over 15 million of the widows. That is out of the number of 258 million. So we are over more than 10% of the number globally. It's coming from Nigeria. And then when you look at this abduction and kidnapping, the girl child is always most affected by it. We see the Chibok girls, the Dapchi girls, and then these girls stay in captivity and eventually become women. And these are the key areas that we can just keep talking about it. And while when it comes to days, international days like that, in the future, going through the year, towards the second to the last quarter, that's when we will be celebrating the girl child, having campaigns and all of that. But for now, March is for Women's Day, and it's just an encouragement that, you know what, maybe the focus on the paper today is about widowed women, and then is due to insurgency. These numbers, when you look at it, is more about insurgency, where we have our military out there, and we see that the women are complaining that there's no empathy, there's no structure. We've seen that several times on the news, we've seen that on our papers, and then we are looking forward to a better structure, to better care. And when such things are being brought to our attention, it also tells us that we don't have to wait for the government to do a certain thing, that we can also be able to touch lives within and around us. I know the religious organizations and bodies will be out there trying to reach out. And for us out there, you know what? It's Women's Day. You have sisters, you have mothers, you have sister-in-law, you just have friends that you should be able to celebrate on a day like this. And I believe that is expected. Do something special, or do a campaign and let people know some of the problems that women particularly face around the world, in Nigeria, and then even in your community precisely.
That's a good one. And these are all the stories you can find on the Guardian newspaper.
On the Voice of Liberty, the big story: in Kaduna, bandits attack primary school, shoot pupil and abduct dozens. And this is sad. There was pandemonium yesterday in Kuriga town of Chikun local government area of Kaduna State, when bandits invaded LEA primary school Kuriga 1 and abducted dozens of pupils. House of Reps to go after 5,000 coins owing federal government 5.2 trillion naira unpaid taxes. Plateau discover illegal gun factory, recover AK-47s and other weapons. This is in Plateau State. Court restrains Kano Assembly from amending judiciary and other laws. Alleged 1.2 billion naira fraud. Tinubu suspends Rural Electrification Agency MD and 3 directors. Federal government okays new satellite pay-per-view TV network, and I'm looking forward to that with multi-choice also. Alleged 400 billion era, 40 billion naira fraud. Obiano asked court to quash charges against him. Provocative statement. ACF tackles Ohaneze Indibo IPOP for demanding apology from Gowon, and that's all news on Voice of Liberty.
Now to First News newspaper. From the top we have, I'm ready to sacrifice my office for peace to reign, says Fubara. Things will begin to change, Tinubu assures Nigerians. And the big story here says federal government launches manhunt for coup mongers. As minister described calls for military takeover as absurd, warns perpetrators to desist, reaffirms military's commitment to defending constitution, upholding democracy, urges all Nigerians to support Tinubu's government's efforts to make Nigeria great. Shaibu's impeachment proceedings notice, protest rocks Edo as women youth storm streets. Alleged 1.2 billion naira fraud. Tinubu sacks replaces REAMD executive directors. More trouble for Emefiele as forensic analyst confirms forgery in $6.2 million case. How bandits storm Kaduna Village School, kidnapped 287 pupils. This is coming from the teacher, and from the picture story there, we see one of the teachers of the government secondary school in Kuriga, Kaduna State, Sani Abdullahi. He's narrating to Governor Ubasani and other top government officials that went, and security officials that went there to visit and to look at the situation and to look at the school, and abducted 287 pupils. That happened yesterday in Kaduna State. Really sad. And Orasai report, FG inaugurates implementation committee. Pilots escape death as Air Force trainer aircraft crashes in Kaduna State. Tambuwal meets Obasanjo, says things are getting worse daily. And Sanu to Tinubu, you have saboteurs in your government. And the last story here says Labour proposes 485,000 naira minimum wage.
On the Punch newspaper, Tinubu suspends REA bus directors over alleged 1.2 billion naira fraud. Reps demand 2024 budget review over forex crisis. With philanthropy, dedication to gospel exemplary. This is coming from Adeboye. You can find details on page 21. The big story on the paper, outrage as bandits kidnap 280 pupils from Kaduna schools. Teacher says gunmen invaded primary secondary schools after morning assembly, kidnapped over 280 pupils and workers. Governor visits schools, promises pupils rescue. JNIPTA Amnesty International condemn attack. Recover 5 trillion naira unremitted MD8 taxes, reps tells FIRS. Kaduna plane crash, pilot escaped dead, air chief orders probe. And on minimum wage, workers differ, governors want revenue sharing review. You can find details on page 7, and that's all the news on the Punch newspaper.
Nigerian News Direct newspaper. The big story here says minimum wage review. Governors shun public hearings as labor unions differ on proposed hike. The writer says unions peg minimum wage between 850,000 naira to 447,000 naira. From the top, we have alleged 6.2 million US dollars fraud. Forensic expert confirms forgery of Buhari Mustafa's signatures. And Tinubu suspends RIA MD, 3 others over alleged 1.2 billion naira fraud. You can find more details on page 22. Reps to probe 200 billion naira spent on suspended 2023 census. Well, this issue of the issue of this census, you know.
Yeah.
It was high, and there was a time that a date, I think, was given that the census was going to take place, and then all of a sudden, everything just went under the carpet. We're not even hearing anything about it, and there was a budget of 200 billion naira spent on the suspended 2023 census, and we are always talking about fighting corruption in this country. And as far as I'm concerned, there has been no report on this particular money. That's why the reps is calling, or is looking to probe it and then see what happened to the 200 billion naira that was spent on that suspect, because it didn't take place.
It didn't take place.
So what happened to the funds? You know, it's really alarming, and sometimes you see it and you wonder how people do these things, how public funds will just be spent without any form of reports or whatever it is, you know, something that did not even take place, and then you see such an amount of money that has been spent on it. I hope they follow up this thing, and then if there's any misappropriation of funds, it should be punished appropriately.
I think what happened with the census was that there was, the budget was more than what was supposed to be released. That is the estimated expenditure and what should have taken place. Then the federal government now gave this money, I believe in batches or in installment. And then this money had already gone into training, and there was I don't know what to call it, an exercise using the devices that would be used for the census. And then people who did this exercise or participated were also paid. Now, I believe that if not for the canceling of, or let's call it postponement, because we still hope it's going to happen, this probe wouldn't even be a problem in the first place, because this expenditure was in the process. And then now you ask the question, whose fault is it that money was already sunk into the process and then it was cancelled? It was the federal government who put a halt to the process. Imagine after, you know, processing, buying the beavers and printing all the ballot papers and all of that, and let's say 500 billion naira has gone into that expenditure, and then we say, okay, let's halt elections, for example. Then there will be 500 billion naira gone and no election taking place. This is the same case for the suspended census. And I believe that now the problem is that this much money have to go into the expenditure again, because it needs to be done afresh again. And I am looking forward. We were seeing where the budget for the census was almost 800 billion. And the federal government was hoping that, okay, if we give these funds, we will see how there will be more funding along the line. And then we saw how there was going to be hope that there will be international aid coming in for the census, and then nothing came. And then coupled with the fight with election, because it was supposed to take place in May 2024, that 23, that was the time frame that was given for the census. And then looking at election, inauguration, and all of that, it didn't hold. And I'm just looking forward to, rather than a probe, there should just be continuity, because it's not like the activities did not start taking place. There was recruitment at the local government area. There were testing and use and all of those devices and in the place. I remember at that time, because this was something that we followed, because we were excited about census, because we really need to know what is our population, and we might even be surprised that we might be lesser than what we are estimating, or we could be way higher than what we think is our population and all of that. So I'm expecting a continuity rather than stopping, as if when you start probing, it then now looks like we are canceling it completely, like it will not take place. But I'm expecting to see more of a continuation rather than a probe, because now when you want to start probing, you halt it and start investigating, and then who knows when this investigation will start and finish, and then we will see that 2024 is gone, there's no census, and then we are now looking at 2025, and we don't need all of that. So I just hope that rather than a probe, let's just continue. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be looked into, but the probing sounds like you're stopping it to investigate rather than continuing with what is going on.
Well, I believe there's no smoke without fire. Probably that's why the reps is going ahead to probe. Since just like you've said, some exercises have taken place in preparations towards the census rather that was suspended. Definitely funds were used and all of that, but probably these funds were not up to what is here.
Definitely
so
possible.
Probably that's why the reps is saying, okay, you know what, let's look into this matter and see why such amount has been spent. Meanwhile, the exercise did not take place, but although there were preparatory exercises that took place. So we'll see how this will continue and probably end. And I hope it will not just be another probe that will be swept under the carpet.
We hope not.
Well, still on Nigerian News Direct newspaper, Nigeria to receive first vaccine for meningitis in the world. You can find more details on page 4, and I'm happy because we have been through the week we've been talking about the health issues, especially meningitis and heat-related illnesses, meningitis and then measles and the likes of them. And now we are seeing that Nigeria to receive first vaccine for meningitis in the world, and I think this is a really nice step that is taken in the right direction. And foreign remittances hit $1.3 billion in February 2024. This is coming from the Central Bank of Nigeria. And Tijani Sanwo-Olu Abiodun to perform groundbreaking of Airtel's new data center. If you're so interested in the story, you can find it on page 2 of Nigerian News Direct newspaper. And these are all the stories you can find on this particular newspaper.
Before we continue with the papers, we'd just like to take a short break so that we can catch our breath and then go on with other stories on the paper.
Democracy is the theory that common people know what they want and deserve to get it good and hard. Join me every Friday, 7 p.m. on National Talk for analysis as well as in-depth perspective on issues as they unfold in and around Nigeria, as well as an opportunity to add your voice.
Welcome back, and thank you for not going anywhere. And moving on to the papers, the big story on New Telegraph newspaper says bandits invade Kaduna school, shot pupils and abduct 280. We're on their trail. This is coming from police. They will return home unhurt, coming from the governor. Angry residents protest incessant attacks, barricade Kaduna Abuja Expressway. Details can be found on page 2. Unclaimed dividends, capital market investors abandon 190 billion naira. CBN measures will attract increased investment inflows. On hardship, Tambuwal meets OBJ says Nigeria getting worse by the day. Again, blackout in National Assembly paralyzes legislative and other activities. Alleged $6.2 million fraud. EFCC's witness admits no forensic examination on Emefiele's signature. Poverty, insecurity, Nigeria's biggest challenge, coming from Sani. You can find details on page 5. Federal government orders DIA to go after coup advocates. Or Sani report, federal government inaugurates implementation panel. Fire gut arrival finger of Lagos airport. Still on the paper, NLC proposes 709,000 naira, TUC 447,000 naira, and Plateau 80,000 naira. This is on the minimum wage, and I found Plateau's, I mean, I want to be a little bit hilarious. When you're looking at 709,000 naira, 447, and then we are having NLC on the Plateau saying 80,000 naira. I mean, they are looking at the pocket of their government, obviously, but I was expecting a little bit higher figure than this. As the public hearing of tripartite committee begin, then we have pensioners want 85% of any agreed sum. This is coming from Omezi. You can find details on page 3. IWD 2024, that is the International Women's Day, Nigerian Women Elemental to National Development, statement from President Tinubu. And at the downside of the paper, we have a study that says microplastics increase risks of heart attacks and strokes. And if you're wondering what microplastics are, is usually, you know, when you do anything that has to hit plastic or nylon, that is the talk of using of microwaves, or when you are using plastic spoons rather to stir your meals and all of that. Anything that gets microplastic, that is heated plastic, into anything you consume, we are seeing that it is going to be high risk for heart attacks and then also stroke. So this is very important. You can find more details on page 26, and that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
The Daily Times newspaper, from the top we have Tinubu suspends Rural Electrification Agency REA's MD and others. FD moves to tap from $2.5 billion carbon market. You can find more details of this particular story on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. CAS orders probe of NAF trainer aircraft mishap. You can find more details on page 4. CBN to sanction MFBs, PMBs and DFIs for failing to file returns. The big story here says bandits kidnapped 232 pupils, teachers in Kaduna school. You can find more details on page 4. And Emefiele, Buhari, Mustafa's signatures were forged, witness tells court. And the last story here says SEC to reduce 190 billion naira unclaimed dividends through investor clinics. You can find more details on page 5 of the Daily Times newspaper. And these are all the news stories you can find on this newspaper.
On the Matrix newspaper, Nigeria's central bank rallies investors as dollar inflow surges to $1.3 billion. Futsal AFCON 2024 draw confirmed. You can find details on page 16. 1.2 billion naira alleged fraud. Tinubu suspends Rural Electrification Agency CEO and others. You can start with the details on the front page. Orosai report. Akume leads inaugurates implementation committee. Reiterates the exercise was meant to reduce the cost of governance, giving the committee a 12-week deadline to submit its report. National Assembly will support implementation with required legislation coming from Algero. You can find details on page 2. On student loan, federal government says recovery to begin 2 years after NYSC. Police NEMA put warehouses in Lagos on high alert over possible attacks by hoodlums. This is still on hardship. SEC intensifies strategy to reduce 190 billion naira unclaimed dividends. More details can be found on page 19. And on entertainment, Remi Oluko reveals how Wizkid changed Nigerian music industry. And on Rivers crisis, I'm willing to resign for peace in Rivers. This is coming from Governor Fubara. That the feud there is still on. You can start with the details on the front page. Several student teachers feared kidnap in Kaduna State, and that's all the news on the Matrix newspaper.
Coming to the daily struggle, private sector weak as economy declines by $44 billion in 2023. This is coming from the NESG. You can find more details on page 10. Zamfara government verifies 379,000 retirees, settles 2.3 billion naira backlog of gratuities. And I think this is a good step in Zamfara state for doing this. This is kudos to them. And hoodlums break into government warehouse in Abuja, steal food items. You can find more details on page 10. Dorawak reconciles with Kano governor, returns as Hisbah commander. On Ramadan, Mariam Abacha urges government to provide food assistance to the less privileged. Sitad hands over 26 million naira Hello World Hoop to Jama community. Concerns rise over Nile's Nartic merger. In Kaduna, bandits holding 287 students, teacher who fled captivity speaks. You can find more story details on page 3. IGP bars POS operators from police stations nationwide. They are saying that POS should not be operated inside the police stations, right, nationwide. And in foreign scenes, we have U.S. continuous support for Israeli genocide in Gaza. This is coming from senior Hamas official. And these are all the news stories you can find on the Daily Struggle.
You know, Lois, you can't just help but wonder what is POS doing in the police station for bail. I mean, and it's really funny and sad. It just shows us our system and how, I mean, virtually everything is not functioning the way it should, because you wonder what are they selling there, or what transaction will warrant that the police station should have a POS. And it's just sad, but then it's coming out, it's banning it. So it's also important that Nigerians out there, you know what the IGP have said, so, and you have the right to speak against it when you find yourself in the police station trying to pay bail or being charged for anything is not acceptable, and you know your right as it is now, because a lot of time we don't know our rights, and we just flow with a lot of things because we want to be very good law-abiding citizens to the extent that we get abused along the line. And this is one of those things that is not acceptable. Tell them that their IGP said that they are not supposed to have POS, and for that reason you're not going to use it. They should give you the right way or channel in which to make payments and all of that, and then eventually we will see a better Nigeria unfolding. Now, moving on to the next paper, which will be the Business Day newspaper. All right, 1 minute. On the Business Day newspaper, the big story says investment in women on the spotlight for economic growth. You can find details on page 30. This is still on the International Women's Day for 2024. Nigerians cut champagne intake to 11-year low as inflation bites. We had report last year, 2023, that we were one of the highest consuming champagne countries in the world, and now we are seeing that we have to cut it down because of inflation. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 30. And we have other stories that are not that clear on the paper. Do well to grab the Business Day newspaper, and we have charts of what the currencies are actually exchanging for as it is now, and that's all the news on Business Day newspaper.
On Nature News, farmers in the north pay levies to access their farmland. This is a report, and you can find details on page 5 of Nature News newspaper. And this is happening because of the insurgency in this region, and that's why farmers have to pay this amount, these levies to the bandits, just to access their own farmlands, and this is really sad. The federal government signs agreement for 10,000 tractors in 5 years. This is coming from Kiari, and you can find more details on page 7. NPA commits $1 billion for reconstruction of tin can at Papa Port. Nature fact: can fish skin heal wounds? It's a question. Can fish skin heal wounds? It's a nature fact. And the big story here says Environment Minister Lawal plans national awareness campaign on sanitation. Extols Nature News commitment to environmental journalism. You can find more details on page 3. We need to feed ourselves, says Governor Bago. and 501 billion naira remitted by NPA in 2023. This is a report, and you can find more details on page 16. Illegal mining wreak havoc on Nigeria's environment. You can find more details on page 6. On nature care, Gingo Biloba and your health. How Kwara plans to become Nigeria's food hub. This is coming from Commissioner in Kwara. And the last story here on sports says Sergio Garcia leads contingent of 21 LIV golf players seeking majors qualification. You can find more detail for sport people on page 21 on Nature News newspaper. And these are all the stories you can find here.
Now in our world of sports, looking at Sporting Sun, we have I Saw Hell Coaching. This is coming from Ole Sosha, and this is his encounter, I believe, with CR7. You can find details at the back page. PSG president, I can't confirm Mbappe's departure. Details at the back page. Vinicius Junior risks ban. Alien Saka's back. We have Onana buys mansion 1,000 miles from Manchester. Barker not on my mind, coming from Leo. And then we have the big story, Desert War, Joshua 6 redemption, battles Ugano in Saudi Arabia, Lagos fans back British Nigerian boxer, and I am backing Francis Ugano, the Cameroonian. I mean, that's my guy, and I'm hopefully going to watch this match. It's going
so you're
to
not
be,
going to back your own brother, You left Nigeria, you're going all the way to Cameroon. Nice one.
Francis has been good, and I'm going to stay up late because their time is always different, but I'm looking forward to the match. I'm definitely going to watch it. It's mixed martial art, jumping to boxing for more money and all of that. And you can find details on page 3. You have statistics of wins and strengths and all of that on the paper also. So if you are a mixed martial art fan or a boxing fan, this is going to be a tough one. And then time is 11 p.m. We have Chelsea rigs 6-year homelessness, and then we have club declared wanted, BBC ITV after him for Euro 2024 pundit. And then okay, Vinicius Junior rigs ban after going for opponent's throat. Bellingham goes unpunished for allegedly tagging Greenwood rapist. Uwabali battles Williams again for Golden Gloves in South Africa. You can find details on page 6. Day I almost quit Super Eagles. This is coming from Ekong. He's talking about the day he almost quit Super Eagles. You can find details on page 6. Atlanta manager, how I helped Lookman improve his game. Details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun newspaper. And also this is how far we can go on the show today. Thank you, Lois, for doing this with me.
Thank you, Rachel, and I want to say happy International Women's Day
yeah.
to all the women out there. I love you all, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thank you very much, Lois. And then thank you for our viewer for doing this with us all through the week. Do have a blessed weekend and see you next week. Goodbye.